Hi, in this video, we're gonna learn how to solve linear equations in two variables using the graphing method. Let's start with a simple problem. Problem number 1. Solve y equals x plus 5 and y plus x equals 2. The first thing you need to do is to fix each line into the form y equals mx plus b. So y equals x plus 5 and y plus x equals 2 will now become y equals x plus 5 and y equals negative x plus 2. The next step would be graphing each of the lines. So, you first find the x-intercept and y-intercept of each line. Now, the x-intercept of y equals x plus 5 is negative 5, and the y-intercept of y equals x plus 5 is 5. The x-intercept of y equals negative x plus 2 is 2, and the y-intercept of y equals negative x plus 2 is 2. After finding the x and y intercept of the two lines, we will then plot them and make the graph. As you can see here, we have plotted the x-intercept of the first line, y equals x plus 5, on the x-axis. The next thing we did is plot the y-intercept of the first line, y equals x plus 5, but this time it is on the y-axis. After plotting the x and y-intercept of the first line, we will now plot the x-intercept of y equals negative x plus 2 on the x-axis. Then, we have plotted the y-intercept of the line y equals negative x plus 2 on the y-axis. After plotting all the x and y-intercepts of both lines, we will now connect the x-intercept and y-intercept of the first line, y equals x plus 5. After connecting the x and y-intercept of the first line, we will now connect the x and y-intercept of the second line, y equals negative x plus 2. We will now move on to the third and final step, finding the point where they intersect. We can see here that both lines intersect on the blue dot. This dot shows the answer to both equations. So, the final answer is negative 3 halves and 7 halves. Now let's move on to a harder problem. Problem number 2. Solve y equals 3x plus 1 and y equals 3x minus 4. First thing we need to do is fix each equation into the form y equals mx plus b. So, y equals 3x plus 1 and y equals 3x minus 4 still remains the same, since they were in the form y equals mx plus b to begin with. The next step we will do is to graph each of the two lines by first finding the x and y intercept of each line. The x and y intercept of y equals 3x plus 1 is negative 1/3 and 1 respectively, while the x-intercept and y-intercept of the second line is 4/3 and negative 4 respectively. After finding the x and y-intercept, we will now plot them. So let us first begin with the x-intercept of the first line. The x-intercept of the first line is negative 1/3. So we plot that on the x-axis. Now, Let us plot the y-intercept of the first line. And the y-intercept of the first line is 1. So we plot that on the y-axis. After plotting the x and y-intercept of the first line, we plot the second line's x-intercept, which is 4/3. After plotting the x-intercept, we move on to the y-intercept, which is -4, and we place that on the y-axis. Now that we have finished plotting the points, we will now connect the x-intercept and y-intercept of the first line. After connecting them, we will now connect the x-intercept and y-intercept of the second line. Next thing we do is find the point where they intersect. But as you can see, they don't intersect at any point. This means that they have no solution. Let us move on to another problem. Problem number 3. Solve y minus 1/2 x equals -1 and y plus 3/2 x equals 3. The first thing we need to do is to fix each line into the form y equals mx plus b. So y minus 1/2 x equals -1 and y plus 3/2 x equals 3 will now become y equals 1/2 x minus 1 and y equals -3/2 x plus 3. We will now move on to graphing each of the two lines. By first finding the x and y intercept of each of the lines. So, the x-intercept of y equals 1/2 x minus 1 would be 2, while the y-intercept would be -1. The x-intercept of y equals -3/2 x plus 3 would be 2, and its y-intercept would be equal to 3. We will now move on to plotting the x and y-intercept of the lines. Let us first start with the x-intercept of the first line. The x-intercept of the first line, y equals 1/2 x minus 1, is 2. So we now place it on the x-axis. The y-intercept of the first line, y equals 1/2 x minus 1, is -1. So we mark that on the y-axis. After marking the x-intercept and y-intercept of the first line, we will now mark the x-intercept of the second line, which is 2. After marking the x-intercept 2, we now mark the y-intercept 3 on the y-axis. We will now move on to the third and final step, finding the point where they intersect. The first thing we will do is connect the x-intercept and y-intercept of the first line, y equals 1/2 x minus 1. After connecting the x and y end of the first line, we will now connect the x and y end of the second line, y equals -3/2 x plus 3. Notice that the two lines intersect at 2, 0. This is the solution. And that is all for this video. Thank you for watching. This math project is presented by Isak of Adelpha, Hannah Pastores of Rosal, and Diana Tan of Sampaguita. And the sources used for this math project is Algebra 1 with trigonometry book.